We have 291 voters in the hall. We have a quorum. I will now call the meeting to order.
How many? 206.
Again, all of the rules that I stated at the first night of the first session are still in effect. Just to give you a couple of short reminders. Once the clerk has pulled the number, as you remember, we do it by lottery, and as we get finished with an article, I will turn to the clerk, and the clerk will pull the next article. I will then ask for a motion and a second, and then the proponent will have 5 minutes to speak. I will ask for a vote of the Board of Selectmen and the vote and recommendation of the Finance Committee, at which time then we will be open for debate. Please come to the microphone and clearly state your name, and I would appreciate if there were not more than 2 people at the microphone, and that's for safety reasons to keep the aisles clear. Again, it is up to the moderator to recognize a speaker, and I only recognize speakers who come to the microphone, so there should be no other discussion going on. You should be respectful of the person who is speaking, and please keep your comments quietly and respect what they have to say and listen, so that they may say something that you won't get up 5 minutes later and repeat. Amendments to the motions will be accepted. However, there will not be any amendments to the amendments. Again, the photo policy is that I have given permission for 2 people to take photographs. They may take them only from the press section, and no photographs may be taken during a vote. Again, if you have to leave the auditorium, please use the door on my left to protect the integrity of this meeting, so that the tellers can make sure that you are a registered voter coming back in, and do not use the back door or the side door. Please turn off all cell phones. And a reminder, there is no food or drink in the auditorium. For those of you who have parked in the roadway, there is a fire lane. It will be enforced, and I know there was a little difficulty parking, but I believe one of the FinCom members said if you need to go out and move your car, there is plenty of parking down the far end. Also, a reminder that there is no smoking on school property. That means that you can't walk out and just walk across the roadway, because that is still school property. This is a state law. And if you need to go out and have a cigarette, you do need to leave school property. As per our charter, I am required to do a roll call of department heads. So I will now call for the roll call. I see that our Board of Selectmen and our Finance Committee are here. Board of Health, Chief Assessing Officer, Community Development, Conservation, Council on Aging, Data Processing, EMS, Inspectional Services, Municipal Maintenance is ill this evening, Planning, Police, Shellfish, Town Accountant, Town Clerk, Town Collector Treasurer, Library, Water Pollution Control, and the School Department. Ladies and gentlemen, one of the things that I wanted to explain, I've had a couple people ask me after the last meeting, when I call and ask for a vote of the Selectmen, or I call and ask for a vote of the Finance Committee, exactly what does that mean? If you'll see in your warrant that you'll have a vote that will say 500 or 050 or 410, the articles that come before us are generally for favorable action. The first number means that that entity, either the Finance Committee or the Board of Selectmen, that's the number that are in favor. The second number is the number that of the board who are opposed, and the last number means that they have abstained. Also, just for your information, the votes on a lot of these articles were taken before the election, so it would have been the prior board that voted on these and not necessarily those that are sitting before you. So I just wanted to clear that up because I did have several people ask. On my right, to what reason do you rise?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Through you to the body, I'd like to make a motion. I'd like to, Jane Donahue, Precinct 3.
We
Sorry.
don't have any article on the floor, so why would you be making a motion?
I would like to move to take Article 6, the town budget, out of order.
I'm sorry, Mrs. Donahue, but we are bound by the lottery unless there is a financial importance to this, and I understand.
If I might explain the financial importance, I'd appreciate it.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I really appreciate the opportunity to explain the financial importance. We are voting on a lot of money issues this evening and last week as well. This Springtown meeting is called, and the most important aspect of the business that we have before us is to pass a town budget. We have heard very, very, very little from any of our town leaders, including the explanation in the warrant, which says hardly anything about the town's budget. Yet we are bringing forward articles like the stabilization budget, which we voted on without really any information. And I respectfully ask the body that perhaps we might want to hear a little more about the town's overall financial picture and the town's budget before we vote on any further articles. So that is why I'm bringing my motion forward. I think it is of the utmost importance. Thank you, Madam Moderator.
As I said, while I appreciate what you have to say, Mrs. Donahue, I'm not going to accept the motion because we do have a charter that says that we will do it by lottery. I do believe that at the opening, the Finance Committee did make a statement as to the situation that we're in, and hopefully the budget will come up quickly.
Well, then, Madam Moderator, through you to the body, if I could just say, please keep that in mind, everybody, before we start voting on a lot of other financial issues. You have not heard this information.
Thank you,
and I
Mrs.
think we
Donahue.
should have heard
Thank
it.
you. Town Clerk, would you please pull our first article? Article 27. May I have a motion?
Madam Moderator,
Yeah, just point it away from the speaker.
Madam Moderator, I move to approve Article 27 as printed in the warrant, with the exception that the committee shall have 11 members rather than 10. The additional voting member to be a member of the Board of Selectmen, and the superintendent be changed from a non-voting to voting member.
Do I have a second? Is that you, Mrs. Bronk, that second? Thank you. To speak to the article, on my right.
The Mass School Building Authority requires that we have a building committee for the Minot Forest building project before we move ahead, before they will give any reimbursement for any of the money spent. So, in the names that are here are the particular members are prescribed by the Mass School Building Authority. So that's why this motion is before you. Thank you.
Thank you. May I have the vote of the Board of Selectmen?
Madam Moderator, the Board of Selectmen voted 1 in favorable action, 1 in favor, 2 opposed, and 0 abstained.
Thank you. May I have the vote and recommendation of the Finance Committee?
The Finance Committee voted favorable action 6-0-0.
Is there anything to be said on Article 27? Seeing no one standing, I will now call for a vote on Article 27. It requires a majority vote. You are voting on Article 20. Selectman Holmes?
Sorry about that. It was just a point of information. I heard Mr. Gray say something about the Board of Selectmen and the superintendent being a voting member. But I don't see that up there, and I don't see it in my book. So this is an amendment? Is this an amendment to what we have written?
No, the motion that was read,
It's not in the book, though, right?
no, it's not in the book.
Okay, that's all I want to clarify, is that
It's what's up
that's
on the
not in
screen.
the book.
The superintendent and the selectman would be a voting member. There's nothing further to be said. We'll take a vote on Article 27, which requires a majority to approve Article 27 as printed in the warrant. Somebody state your point? Yeah, I didn't finish. As printed in the warrant, except that the Board of Selectmen and the superintendent will be changed from a non-voting to a voting member. So it's changed from what's in your warrant to include that the selectmen and the superintendent will be a voting member. On my left?
Martha Strawn, Precinct 3. If I understand correctly, if this is voted in, you're going to add a member and give the superintendent also the authority to become a voting member. Would that perhaps mean that the superintendent would be a member of the Board of Selectmen?
No.
Okay, I'm totally confused here.
No.
So you're adding a member of the selectmen.
Right.
Thank you.
Right.
And then you're also giving him voting privileges.
Yes.
Correct, thank you.
Anything further on Article 27? If not, I will call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed? Passes by a majority. Article 19. May I have a motion?
Madam Moderator, I move that $110,000 is appropriated for repairs to the Wareham High School gymnasium roof, including the payment of all costs incidental or related thereto, that to meet this appropriation, the treasurer, with the approval of the Board of Selectmen, is authorized to borrow $110,000 under General Law, Chapter 44, Section 73A, or any other enabling authority, that the Board of Selectmen is authorized to contract for and expend any federal or state aid available for the project, and that the Board of Selectmen is authorized to take any other action necessary or convenient to carry out this project, provided, however, that this vote shall not take effect until the town votes to exempt from the limitation on total taxes imposed by General Law, Chapter 5921C, Proposition 2.5, amounts required to pay the principal of and interest on the borrowing authorized by this vote.
May I have a second? To speak to the article on my right?
This high school building is approximately 23 years old. The high school gymnasium roof has been leaking rather badly. We've had to put a tarp, and it presents a safety concern where when water leaks down and we have phys ed classes in the gym, people can slip and hurt themselves, and we need to repair it. Our recent NEASC report that was read at the last school committee meeting, it's one of the things that NEASC has said we must do to continue with accreditation. So it's $110,000 to fix the gymnasium roof through a Prop 2.5 debt exclusion. Thank you.
Thank you. May I have the vote of the Board of Selectmen?
Madam Moderator, the Board of Selectmen voted Favorable action, 1 in favor, 2 opposed, and 0 abstained.
May I have the vote and recommendation of the Finance Committee?
The Finance Committee voted favorable action 5-1-0. The committee recommends favorable action on this article in order that the proposed exclusion may be submitted to the total electorate of the town for their decision.
Thank you. Is there anything to be said on Article 19? Seeing no one, I will call for a vote. This does require a 2/3 vote. Okay. On my right?
Michelle Langford, District 4. I just have a question about this. It says it'll cost the taxpayer, the average homeowner, $1.50 per year for 5 years. Is this for the total debt exclusion or just for the roof?
To answer the question?
Madam Moderator, do you want me to answer the question?
If you would like.
Sure. The $1.50 is just for the roof portion of the debt exclusion.
How many homes do we have in Wareham?
I believe her question was, how many homes do we have in Wareham?
Yes.
Somewhere, the clerk advises somewhere around 8,300.
Okay. So, okay.
Anything further to be said on Article 19? If not, I'll call for a vote. Again, this requires a 2/3 vote. You're voting on Article 19. As before you on the screen, that $110,000 is appropriated for repairs to the Wareham High School gym, and this just gives authorization for the treasurer to borrow should this go forward on a ballot question, and should the article pass on the ballot, then the treasurer would be authorized to borrow. I'm going to try for a voice vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. Carries by a 2/3 voice vote. Article 13. May I have a motion on Article 13?
Madam Moderator, I move that the town vote to approve all of the following GL 44 53.5 revolving funds as printed, except that the spending limit for Council on Aging Transportation will change from $200,000 to $210,000. That library be changed from $20,000 to $30,000, and social recreation be changed from $50,000 to $1, or to do or act in any manner relative.
Do I have a second? To speak to the article?
Through you, Madam Moderator, to the body, these are our annual revolving funds. The reduction to the recreation for $1 was, since that is all under the Council on Aging, it would go above 1% of our levy base, and therefore would make our revolving funds illegal in that aspect. The other part is that the library had requested last year to be moved up to $30,000. That was passed and should be brought forward.
Thank you. May I have the vote of the Board of Selectmen?
The Board of Selectmen voted favorable action, 2 in favor, 1 opposed, with 0 abstained.
And may I have the vote and recommendation of the Finance Committee?
The Finance Committee voted favorable action, 8 in favor, 0 against, and 0 abstentions.
Thank you. Is there anything to be said on Article 13? Seeing no one, I will now call for a vote on Article 13. It requires a majority vote. You're voting to approve the revolving funds as printed in your warrant, except that the Council on Aging Transportation will change from 200,000 to 210. The library will change from 20,000 to 30,000, and social recreation will change from 50,000 to $1. This requires a majority vote. All those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed? Passes by a majority. Madam Clerk? Article 47. Article 47 is a petition article. If the petitioner would like to come forward and make a motion.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. The Oakdale Betterment Association's petition is to vote, see if the town will vote to set a financial cap for the sewer work to be charged to the Oakdale Quemeset neighborhoods betterment fee of no more than $18,000.
Do I have a second? Thank you. To speak to the article?
My name is Barbara Gomes Beach. I am a resident and a voter and a taxpayer living in the Oakdale neighborhood. I have been there, or I should say my family has been there for close to 100 years, and we have been very loyal taxpayers in the town of Wareham. This petition, the first thing that the Oakdale Quemeset neighborhood and the OBA petition would like the entire town and our neighbors to know that not only do we have a long history as loyal tax-paying residents, it is not our intention and never has been to not pay our fair share of the sewer betterment fee. We feel that the sewer betterment fee that is, we think, and we have heard, that will be charged to the Oakdale Quemeset region is more than other neighborhoods have paid, but more importantly, that this fee is not based on a equitable formula that was first put together when the entire sewer betterment project was put together back in 2002, I believe, between 2002 and 2004. Third, we believe that we will not be receiving any superior or different services under this betterment fee than any other neighborhoods in the Wareham area. Fourth, because of this, we believe that the Oakdale Quemeset sewer project has been tainted and flawed from the very beginning. We ask that our voice be heard. We understand that we will need to pay a betterment fee, but we do not believe that it is a fair and equitable fee to be charged to our neighborhoods. We'd like to remind the Board of Directors and certainly the sewer commissioners that residents will not only have to pay a betterment fee, but will be asked to pay a connection fee. In addition to the connection fee, we will be asked to pay a fee to dismantle our old systems. In my case, because I have a new home, the system is not even 5 years old. And then we will be asked to pay an inspection fee. We don't know what other fees might be added to this project. So we ask our neighbors to understand that we want our voices heard, and we ask them to raise their voices in hopefully sympathy, but certainly to vote with us to cap our fee so that we can pay an equitable and fair amount for the betterment. Thank you, Madam
Thank you.
Moderator.
May I have the vote of the Board of Selectmen?
Madam Moderator, the Board of Selectmen voted favorable action, 1 in favor, 1 opposed, and 1 abstained.
May I have the vote and recommendation of the Finance Committee?
Madam Moderator, the Finance Committee voted favorable action, 3 for, 5 against, no abstentions.
Thank you. To speak to the article, on my right.
Eddie Pasevich, Precinct 1. A point of information, if the cost of the betterment goes over $18,000, where is the extra money coming from?
Someone to answer the question?
Madam Moderator,
To answer the question?
to answer the question, although I came up to speak in favor of the article, but
We have a question on the floor. Someone care to answer the question?
I will speak to answer the question. Like it was previously stated, we are not asking that the taxpayers of the town of Wareham come up with this additional funds to pay for this cap. We feel as though the system and the process was tainted from the very beginning, and to ask the
If you could
Oakdale-
just to answer his question. His question
To answer his
was,
question would be to ask the Oakdale Cohesive Neighborhoods to pay for this. We say that the selectmen, who were the sewer commissioners at that time, they were the ones that made the decisions that resulted in this situation. Therefore, they should come up with the way to pay for this.
thank you. On my right? Okay, gentleman on my left?
Thank you very much. Ron Robinson, Precinct 3. I'm here today to speak in favor of the article. In order for us to vote intelligently on this article, we must understand the history. So in understanding the history, let me just say that at this town meeting on April the 30th in 2007, when the sewer article first came up, there was a gentleman, speaking through you, Madam Moderator, there was a gentleman, sewer commissioner, selectman, who basically told the town meeting at that time that if this sewer project was not approved, bad things would happen. He went on to say that this sewer project was a mandated project system, was mandated from the state. He made other accusations that were not true. So from the very beginning, this sewer project, it was a tainted process from the very beginning. It went on to be tainted where the process was established where the sewer commissioners chose to separately assess the betterments rather than to assess the betterments collectively, which would have made more sense. Again, the process was tainted when the selectmen / sewer commissioners elected a process to install a gravity sewer system as opposed to
20
a
seconds.
low-pressure system that would have been less costly. All along, this process was tainted, it was wrong, and now you're asking the victim. We're the victims in this situation. It reminds me of the old adage, blaming the victim. Don't blame the victim and ask us where the money's coming from. It seems to me that the process was tainted from the beginning, and the sewer commissioners should be the ones that identify where the problem and where the funds are going to come from. Thank you.
Thank you. Selectman Bagley?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. These areas have already been sewered. The petitioners of this article have not identified where any monies would come from should the betterment be over $18,000. So that question remains. If it comes from the enterprise fund, those that have already been sewered have paid monies into that with their interest rate. So the people that have already paid into sewer would be supplementing this project. Or if it came before the voters for the town to take it on, all of the taxpayers would be supplementing that bill without having their own properties bettered. So I think that the article is definitely flawed, has not identified where any of the monies would come from, so I urge you to vote against this article.
Thank you. On my right?
The The town, my name is Sharon Gomes. I'm a taxpayer of Wareham. They're asking where this money should come from. This winter, we had a great winter. So where's that money for the snow plows? And, I mean, there's money in the town, but it's who they're choosing to put the money in. We have an old project that benefits everyone in the town, taxpayers. We're going on and suing other areas. There are grants that you could apply to every year. So why couldn't you use it for us? I mean, we're taxpayers. Most of these people have paid taxes for 60, 70 years. It's not fair that we start new projects when we can't even finish the old projects and pay. We're asking not a favor. We're asking you to invest into your taxpayers. Get something. Taxpayers want something out of the money that they invest. They pay it for years and years. Many of this project here have been taxpayers for the last 50, 70 years, retired at the age of 70 and 80 years old. It is unfair and unjust.
Thank you. On my right?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Brenda Ekstrom. I'd like to amend this for further study on this article.
Do I have a second?
Second.
We have an amendment on the floor for further study. To speak to the amendment?
Thank you. I think that the issues that have been raised as far as where is the money going to come from, I think those are very valid points. Just to correct something that was said earlier, this did not come to the body in 2007. It originally started working in 1998. The town began work on this. I believe the comprehensive wastewater plan came through was approved in 2002. This has been going on. There have been, I believe, 7 or 8 areas that have already been sewered since 2002. And I think that whether this is fair or unfair, I think that rather than just making an arbitrary number and saying other people can figure out how to pay the rest of it, I think that we need to know how to pay for it before we even consider something like this. So I urge everyone to vote for the study so we can study that. Thank you.
Thank you. Gentleman on my left, just to speak to the amendment of further study.
I'm not here to speak for the amendment.
That's what's before us, sir, is we have an amendment on the floor. Am I right?
Eddie Pasevich, Precinct 1. I speak in favor of the amendment. I've just received recently in the last 5 years sewer, and I had to pay the whole bill. I'm from Briarwood. Nobody else was helping. Nobody else in the town was asked to help. You paid your sewer in your neighborhood. Now we have someone trying to ask for us to supplement them, to support them. The sewer is the sewer in your neighborhood, and that's what it costs. And there's no definition. As previously I asked the question, where was the additional money coming from? There is no answer to that. So I urge you to vote for further study. Thank you.
On my left, sir, would you like to speak for further study?
Yes, I would. I would like to oppose the further study. The fact of the matter is that, once again, I don't want to be repetitious, but once again, we are not asking the taxpayers of Wareham to foot this bill. What we're asking is that this group, this town meeting, approve our articles and thereby send a message, send it back to the sewer commissioners who were the problem in the first place. Send it back to them and let them decide how they're going to pay for it. We don't expect the taxpayers to pay for it. We expect the perpetrators of the problem to pay for it. Thank you.
Am I right?
Yes, Sandy Slavin, Precinct 3. For clarification, I have inherited 2 properties in this neighborhood, and I'm speaking as a homeowner. Further study, we don't even know what our betterment fee is yet. We were supposed to have it by this time. If we do a further study, what does that mean? We just don't act on this 18,000 cap? And if we do further study, when do we act on this? Who knows what our betterment is? It could be 22.5, it could be 23, it could be 18, it could be any time in between. We don't know yet. My concern is that there's a lot of expenses in this particular sewer Phase 2 that have nothing to do with sewering this project. And I just want to know, if we further study, when do we speak to that?
To answer your question, Mrs. Slavin, if the amendment passes for further study, then the article typically dies at this town meeting, and someone would have to take some further action at a later town meeting.
Thank you.
On my left,
George Barrett, Precinct 5. My question's kind of the same vein. What is the timeline for setting the betterment?
to answer the question.
Madam Moderator, through you to the previous speaker, the Board of Selectmen, the sewer commissioners have been asking for the numbers. We do not have a date yet by which we will set that betterment. We're hoping in the very near future.
You are required to establish that betterment within a certain time period after the project's complete, correct?
To answer the question,
Madam Moderator, through you, the project is not complete at this point.
I just didn't know what the timeline for further study was.
thank you. Am I right?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. To kind of answer some of the questions that have been asked, the betterments when they're assessed, I know that the last betterment that was assessed, if they have it in by December 31st, then it would be able to go on the 2014 tax bill. So there is time. There's time for the sewer commissioners, selectmen, to get the numbers. There is also time for them to decide if they were going to do something and to bring this back to the fall town meeting if there was a decision made. That's why I don't think that we should hurry. Right now, all of this money is being held, carried by the current sewer users in short-term bans, and that would continue on until those rates are set and billed to the people in this area.
Thank you. Am I right?
The betterment, this was all one loan. We got divided to pay different betterments. So unfair. You know, we want to pay the betterment. We want it to be fair. But this is one loan that the town took and divided us 3 ways. Totally unfair.
Selectman Begley? And again, if we could stick to the issue before us, and that's the issue of further study.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I urge everyone here to vote in favor of this amendment. Until the monies are identified, should the betterment go above the $18,000 cap that the citizens are proposing, it has to be, the source has to be identified. So either the entire town is going to agree to supplement this betterment, or sewer users who have already paid their betterment are going to agree to supplement a neighbor's betterment.
I'm not sure, was it Mr. Heath or a gentleman on my left? Gentleman on my left?
Madam Moderator, Mike Flaherty, Precinct 1. I move the question.
We have a motion before us to move the question. It's not debatable. It requires a 2/3 vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. Passes by a 2/3 vote. Your vote now will come on the amendment. The amendment on Article 47 is for further study. State your point.
Joe McDonald, Cremisa Road. A previous speaker mentioned that the project is not complete, and I don't agree with that point.
Mr. McDonald, a point of order is to ask whether the speaker was entitled to the floor or whether the speaker was irrelevant. The question that came before us was to move the question. Is that what your point of order is about?
Well, I heard some misinformation that I'd like clarification on.
No, I think we're set. Thank you. So we have before us a motion to move the question. The vote will now come on the amendment for further study. Requires a majority vote. You're voting on further study. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. The amendment fails. We are now back to the main motion to see if the town will vote to set a financial cap on the sewer work in the Oakdale-Comisett neighborhood. Mr. Heath.
Madam Moderator, I was hoping not to get cut off with a motion to move the question. The Finance Committee voted
Madam
against...
Moderator, point of order, please.
Please state your point.
We're standing for a count on the amendment.
And I don't believe that we need that. It was very clear, Mr. Pasevich. I only see two people standing. Go ahead, Mr. Heath. We have 7 voters who are questioning the count. If the tellers will please come forward. The vote will be on further study on Article 47. So what we're voting on is to take a hand count on further study. All those in favor of further study, please raise your hands to be counted. Section 1?
Section 123, 23.
Section 123. Section 2?
36.
Section 2, 36. Section 3?
64, 64.
Section 3, 64. Section 4?
28, 28.
28. All those opposed to further study, please raise your hands. Section 1,
Section 133.
Section 133, Section 2,
38.
Section 238, Section 3,
82, 82.
Section 382, Section 4,
49.
49. There are 151 in favor, 202 opposed. The amendment fails. We are now back to Article 47. Mr. Heath.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. The Finance Committee, when it considered this article, was very concerned about setting a precedent that town meeting would set betterment fees. We had great sympathy for these particular residents, but it basically says the next time that a betterment comes up, that group also can come here and ask town meeting to set the fee. Even more importantly, some people who felt that they might have had the incorrect fee previously could bring suit and come back and say that we want our betterment changed too, or bring it to the town meeting to do so, or it goes. The other thing that is critically important in this, and I think council can verify this for us, is that any deficit that exists in an enterprise fund is the responsibility of the town. One of the things that we were unable to establish in our deliberations was, again, where would the money come from? Would it come from the sewer users by coming out of the retained earnings, which has basically right now been set aside for betterment? It is not free and wide open retained earnings, and what retained earnings are in there are meant for repairs. So we're looking at tapping into what people have put aside over the years to replace pumps, et cetera. We had an article earlier in this town meeting to put in a tank to eliminate odor, et cetera. So we couldn't identify a clear source other than one, and that would be is after when the dust settled, if it was a deficit in the enterprise, the whole town pays.
Mrs. Bronk?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I agree with my colleague here and Chairman, Mr. Heath. However, I do agree with the folks at Oakdale that things don't seem to be done correctly. Unfortunately, the sewer commissioners, we voted a year ago to get elected sewer commissioners, and nothing has transpired yet.
Mrs. Bronk,
And
if
hopefully,
we could stick to the issue of setting the cap.
okay, hopefully, folks, we'll get folks knowledgeable about the sewer, and the people of Oakdale will become more involved in other issues and stay involved so things like this don't happen. And unfortunately, the rest of us can't pay the difference, and that's what it would come down to. And it just isn't there right now. There's nothing in the budget extra.
On my left?
Madam Moderator, Irvin Russell, Precinct 6. Basically, a point of information, I'm kind of perplexed as to what you say. There isn't a rate set as of this point. That's my question. And is there any similar area in town that does have a set rate?
To answer the question, Selectman Holmes?
The previous projects that have been completed were set a betterment fee. You take the total expenses by the number of users, that's your betterment fee. This particular project is not yet completed. It's almost done. And the expenses were pretty close over the next week or so of getting those numbers together. And then we'll take those expenses and minus them by the number of users, and that's the betterment fee. Does that answer your question through you, Madam Moderator, to the Speaker?
Does that answer your question, Mr. Russell?
What was the rate of the previously completed project?
The last one was, I think it was 15.9 or something, around 15,000. The last one that was set was a little over 15,000. $15,010.
So this is not an...
There are actually some numbers, Mr. Russell, through you, Madam Moderator, in your book. There was one set at 12.5, one set at 15.7, one set at 16.7, and one set at 15.010.
Madam Moderator, through you, this is not an unreasonable request, and it's basically not that unfeasible for the rate to come below 18,000. Is that
I can't answer that question,
Is
Madam
that a
Moderator,
logical-
as to whether it's a reasonable request or not.
well,
That's in the eyes of the voter, not me.
Madam Moderator, through you, the previous project that was completed came in at $15,000 per resident or connection with the fees, and right now the motion is to cap it at 18,000. Given take maybe a few different households, this would not be unpractical, and there may not be any need for the rest of the town to supplement like we do everything else, the education, the sewage. We subsidize every municipal service that we have. The town absorbs all
You
of
have
the
30
the
seconds.
cost. And so it's by placing the fear of being assessed taxation to subsidize this project, where doesn't seem like it should be a fear. It's just a normal action, a course of business. And I would ask everybody to vote in favor of this motion to, if these people
Time.
feel that they have been justly assessed, then we should rectify it.
Am I right?
Eddie Pasevich, Precinct 1. Point of information for Town Council. This is a betterment fee, and thinking about the Emerson case, could people who are not receiving this benefit be involved or required to pay for the benefit?
If council wishes to answer, he does.
Madam Moderator, through you, the previous speaker, I always love when someone sets me up to answer a question that sets out the grounds for a new lawsuit. So, if I'm a little circumspect in my answer, forgive me. A couple general points, and then I'll address the question directly. If there is a difference in the cost between the cost of the particular project and the betterment. So in other words, if the betterments are too low, if the 18,000 is too low, and I have no idea whether it's too low or too high, but if it were too low, then the difference would have to be made up either out of the rates, out of the sewer enterprise reserve, or possibly out of the tax levy. And that's if there's a difference between the amount of the betterment and the amount of the cost. Now, as to the Emerson case and its applicability, I'm not going to get into specifics on that. I just will say that there is a tradition of shared costs that get spread around. Not every cost that the town incurs gets picked up by in many cases, the persons who benefit from the cost are fewer in number than the people who actually pay for it. I think schools are sort of the classic example. When you get to the question of fees and whether you have the ability to pay them or not, it usually comes down to a question of discretion. Here, there probably wouldn't be any discretion, and so this will turn into a bad, long-winded answer. I apologize. I'm trying real hard to dance around the lawsuit, so forgive me. Let me just say this. I'll boil it down. The Emerson College test to which you refer goes to the question of whether a fee is too high in relation to the costs. It doesn't go to the question of whether the fee is too low. So it's less likely that someone would win on an Emerson College theory of law for a low fee than they would if it were a high one. Sorry, probably doesn't answer it, but there you go.
On my left.
Thank you, Madam Moderator, and just like to point out that...
Could you state your name, please?
Joe McDonald, Cremisa Road. Twice now I've heard that the project is not complete. I live on Cremisa Road. Nothing has been happening with this project for the last 6 to 8 months. Okay, as far as we're concerned, the project's complete. We have heard nothing from the town about the status of the project, the cost of the project. You know, 2-3 years ago, we were told roughly $20,000 seemed reasonable, even though that's higher than these other projects that have been finished. But, you know, at the time, we can live with 20,000. Then we went to 22,000. We heard that number, and then we heard some other higher numbers thrown out. The people who live in these neighborhoods need to know what they're expected to pay. We're getting nothing from the town. I believe the Board of Selectmen asked one of the directors to come up with this information by mid-April. Didn't happen. We ask for you to understand our situation, and thank you.
Thank you. Selectman Begley?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I have to agree with the previous speaker. We have asked for this information. We're waiting for the final bills from CDM. We're waiting for the final punch list from Mr. Campina, and we had hoped to get that by today, and I see that he's risen to speak. What I am concerned, in a perfect world, the betterment fee would come in significantly less than this, and the point would be moot. If the fee is slightly higher or somewhat higher than this fee, who is paying for it? That's my question. Where is the money coming from? We haven't determined that. It's going to have to come from the taxpayers one way or the other, or the sewer users. Again, as the attorney spoke, it would come from increasing the sewer rates, it would come from the Sewer Enterprise Reserve Fund, or it would come back to the taxpayers. Possibly, I mean, our budget is as tight as it possibly can be. We'll be discussing that later, but it's gonna have to come from somewhere. This is not magic. We all know that. So until they identify the source of the funding, I urge you to vote down this article.
Am I right?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. The project is not done. I know that tonight people are saying, one gentleman, that it's actually completed. We were in his neighborhood last week. We have a hatch there that has some issues. We're trying to rectify that, so we want to make sure that's completed before we accept the project, and betterments will be set once the project has been accepted. We have asphalt issues that we're looking at, so we have to address those. We have pump station issues that we're trying to address. We have pumps running that shouldn't be running. So there's quite a few issues that we're trying to resolve, and we'll get the final punch list, and once that's completed, then we'll bring it to the Selectmen Sewer Commissioners to address it as far as accepting the system. So we're working diligently. The costs, we're collecting them. We've had some preliminary numbers last week. We're working on some preliminary numbers this week, and so I've been asking, demanding, threatening, but I can only get them when they give them to me. And I do not want to speculate. I don't want to give false information. So I'd rather say nothing. And I understand the anxiety. I'm just as anxious. I'd like to get this project completed. I ask for the indulgence of the members of Oakdale and Cremisa, and I know they're as anxious as I am, but I want it right. I just want to make sure we get all the numbers and that they're vetted. Once we get them, we want to vet them to make sure the numbers are proper. Just don't take a number and say, here it is. I want to make sure everything is absolutely accurate, correct, before we move forward. So, and the selectmen have been asking me, yes, you're absolutely right, for quite some time.
20
and
seconds.
I'm doing the very best I can. And so when we get them, we'll definitely get them to you as soon as I have them, something that's concrete. I'll get them to you as soon as I get them, and then we can go from there. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Robinson, you have used your 2 minutes.
May I request an additional minute, please?
I'm sorry?
May I request an additional minute?
You may. Mr. Robinson, how much time do you?
About 30 seconds.
Mr. Robinson would like 30 seconds additional time. All those in favor, please say aye. Opposed? Go ahead, Mr. Robinson.
Thank you very much. And through you, Madam Moderator, there's been a lot of talk about the cost to the taxpayers. And like I said previously, we are not looking for the taxpayers to pick up the tab. However, there are some calculations that suggest the following, that the Oakdale Cremisa betterment at estimated at $22,000. There's a cap of $18,000, which leaves a $4,000 difference. If we were to take that $4,000 and multiply it by the number of properties, we would come up with $940,000. The final analysis is that it would cost every taxpayer, if this was, it would cost every taxpayer $3.36 per year, or it would cost each taxpayer 84 cents per quarterly tax billing, if that was the case.
Mr. Robinson. Am I right?
Yes, Sandy Slavin, Precinct 3. I've been watching what's happening with this particular project. I know there have been some major cost increases from the initial budget. That was contracted. And I think if those incremental expenses were not included in our betterment, we would be down about 18 or 18.5. We moved 3 pump stations after it had been quoted. Avenue A went north side, south side, north side, south side. Every one of those changes cost money. We asked for a quote on putting a building on top of that pump station. That cost money.
Okay, we're getting a little off the subject. The issue before us is whether or not to cap the betterment.
And I'm saying if we had not to have to pay for those incremental expenses, we would be close to this amount.
On my left.
Madam Moderator, may I ask a question to the previous speaker from the town?
Ask a question, whether, he chooses to answer it, I can't make him answer it. But
My question is, what percentage of the project is not complete? My point, may I elaborate on that, please?
Yes, go ahead.
My point being, if you're in a project and you're 95% finished or whatever, you have a rough idea of how much that project's going to cost per parcel. We have been looking for that number for a long time. I'm not going to repeat myself.
To answer the question, if anyone cares to, as to what percentage is complete, Selectman Holmes?
That question, Mr. Campina doesn't need to get up. That betterment has been estimated for the better part of at least 2 years. So to get up and say, sir, through you, Madam Moderator, that fee, no one has any idea what that is, would not be a factual statement. That estimate has been out there for over 2 years. It was there when I got elected. What Mr. Campina is trying to do for the Sewer Commission is set a betterment. We cannot set a betterment on an estimate. The number's been out there, and why we don't answer your question is because we don't know the answer. You have an estimate, and I feel for you. But until we have a final number, we can't set the estimates. Total expenses divided by the number of users, Madam Moderator. That's the answer to the question.
On my right, and again, if we could stick to the issue before us, whether or not to cap the betterment. On my right.
Joe Mulcairn, Precinct 2. Move the motion, please.
We have a motion before us to move the question. If a second, it's not debatable. It requires a 2/3 vote. I will try for a voice vote. All those in favor to move the question, please say aye. All those opposed? It passes. The vote now will come on Article 47, as is before you on the screen, to see if the town will vote to set a financial cap for the sewer work to be charged to the Oakdale Cremisa Neighborhood's betterment fee of no more than $18,000. It requires a majority vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. The chair is in doubt. I'm going to ask for a hand count on this. If the tellers would please come forward. All those in favor of Article 47 as presented before you on the screen, please hold your cards up high and the tellers will take account. The vote is as Article 47 to see if the town will vote to set a financial cap for the sewer work to be charged no more than $18,000. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Please hold your cards up high till they tell you to put them down. Section 1,
Section 128, 28.
Section 128, Section 2,
16.
Section 2, 16, Section 3,
65, 65.
65, Section 4,
46, 46.
Section 4, 46. All those opposed, please raise your cards. Section 1,
29, 29.
Section 129, Section 2,
46.
Section 2, 46, Section 3,
81, 81.
Section 3, 81, Section 4,
28.
Section 4, 28. 28. There's 155 in favor, 184 opposed. The motion fails. ladies and gentlemen. Article 48. I believe this is a petition article. May I have a motion?
Joseph Mulkern, Precinct 2, Madam Moderator. Article 48, to see if the town will vote available funds $30,000 to defray the cost of demolition of derelict properties and to defray the cost of title filing in the town treasurer's collector's office, or to do or act in any manner relative thereto.
May I have a second? To speak to the article? Did someone second it? I have a second, okay. To speak to the article?
I thought I was waiting for the selectmen's vote in the...
No, you get to speak first.
Okay. Speaking on Article 48, we have presently 11 residential condemned properties in Wareham. Most have been condemned for up to 15 years according to the Board of Health. Louder? Oh, go ahead. Okay. Real loud? How's that? Okay. Should I start all over again? Okay. We have presently 11 residential condemned properties in Wareham. Most have been condemned for up to 15 years according to the Board of Health. Nothing has been done. The tax collector's office shows back taxes on these properties of in excess of $39,000. I moved to Wareham in 2009 and noticed these condemned properties. Going to my first town meeting last spring, 2011, Article 16 was basically the same article that I'm putting in tonight, and it was indefinitely postponed. After seeing the property at 118 Sandwich Road burnt and not having the property cleaned up for over a year, I started talking to the selectmen, the inspectional services, and the Board of Health. At numerous Board of Health meetings, the board stated to clean up the properties was not their responsibility. After getting copies of Mass General Laws, Title 16, Chapter 111, Section 127B, which has to do with public health and dwellings unfit for human habitation, the Board of Health has the authority to demolish or remove the blight to protect the health and safety of the public. All of the expenses for removal shall constitute a debt to the owner. Also, Mass General Law 139, Section 3A, with the owner's liability, states that the collector treasurer, after 2 years of unpaid taxes and liens, can take condemned properties and auction off said properties. If all of these properties were sold at auction at land values, there is a potential of getting over $1 million back. The police and the fire chiefs support this Article 48, and I hope you all will support it as well. Thank you.
Mr. Mulkern, could I just ask you a question because I got a little sidetracked? Is your motion exactly as what's up on the screen?
Yes.
Thank you. May I have the vote of the Board of Selectmen?
Madam Moderator, the Board of Selectmen voted favorable action, 3 in favor, 0 opposed, and 0 abstained.
May I have the vote and recommendation of the Finance Committee?
Madam Moderator, the Finance Committee voted favorable action 1 for, 7 against, 0 abstain. The Finance Committee does not recommend favorable action on this article, as it's our understanding the funds are included in the current budget for demolitions.
Thank you. Gentleman on my left.
Frank DeFelice. I'm not opposed to this article, but the responsibility of these buildings is really with the building commissioner, not the Board of Health. The Board of Health gets involved when you have health issues. These are blight issues, and it's the building department, which I happen to be a building inspector, which I happen to know the law, and it's the building inspector's jury. But if they want to lay it on the Board of Health, give us the money and then we could do it. But our department is really small when you look at the Board of Health. we don't have the wherewith to do it. So I'm just saying, I am not against it, but it does lie with the building department, not the Board of Health.
Selectman Winslow?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I think we all support the idea of eliminating the blight and the unsafe buildings from the community. However, currently we have $25,000 budgeted in this line item, and the $30,000 that's requested in this petition article is not budgeted. So should this article pass, this $30,000 will have to come from somewhere in a budget, which, when we get to it, you're going to find out is already pretty lean. So while I strongly support the concept, there is some funding in the budget. It may not be enough, but should we pass this article tonight, we're going to need to cut another $30,000 out of the budget. Thank you.
On my left?
Mike Flaherty, the previous speaker just pretty much took the words out of my mouth. I want to commend the proponent, the person who put this article forth. We all know about the blight that goes on in this town, and would welcome any way to get rid of it. And in principle, I wholeheartedly support this, but then I see the words available funds, and I was going to ask for clarification on that as to where that would come from, whether they are available, and I'm hearing that they're not. Is that correct? As the budget has been presented.
To answer the question?
That is correct. It's not in the FY13 budget.
But did I hear correctly that 25,000 of the 30,000 has been budgeted?
Yes, we had 25,000 budget in FY12, which was not used, and we have 25,000 budget for FY13 in the inspectional services budget line item.
And this would have been, if this passed, it would have been an additional 30,000?
Through you, Madam Moderator, excuse me.
To answer the question?
Yes, that's correct. It would be on top of that. It would be 30,000 on top of the 25,000.
If I could, Madam Moderator, through you to the proponent, I'd like to know if he was aware that 25,000 had been budgeted for this in this year.
To answer the question, if he chooses?
Well, could you repeat that question, please?
Could you repeat the question for Mr. Mulkern?
I'd just like to know if you knew when you submitted this that, or even now, before town meeting, did you know if $25,000 had already been allocated for this in the existing budget?
Yes, I did, but like I say, during my research on this thing here, I kept going to all of the different departments, and I found there was $25,000, and I kept saying, well, if it's been there for a year, how come we haven't taken care of some of this disasters?
Okay, just to answer the question.
And also, the extra...
Mr. Mulkern, just to answer the question, which you did, thank you.
Thank you. I will be reluctantly opposing this article. Again, it's well thought out, it's well planned, but I know the money is not there, and thank you very much.
On my left?
I just want to make one quick comment. Where was the 25,000 budget put in? Was it the building department or the Board of Health's budget?
To answer the question?
Through you, Madam Moderator, it's in the inspectional services department.
Thank
building.
You. Is there anything further to be said on Article 48?
Yes, Ms. Moderator. Just to reemphasize to Mr. DeFelice there, I submitted that's Mass General Law to the health agent yesterday, and it kind of struck me that he had to read the thing like it was the first time he ever saw it. And I'd appreciate that the chairman look it up and find out whose responsibility is to take care of it. This blight it's like I say, they're the ones that condemn the buildings. They're the ones that have to correct the problem, not the selectman's office. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anything further to be said on Article 48? Seeing no one standing, the vote will now come on Article 48, which is to see if the town will vote available funds $30,000 to defray the cost of demolition of derelict property and to defray the cost of tax title filing in the town treasurer collector's office. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. Motion fails. Article 23.
Madam Moderator, I move that Article 23 be voted as printed in the warrant.
Thank you. May I have a second? To speak to Article 23?
Yes, this is the kindergarten revolving account that we put together last week. This would take the money from the current revolving account under Chapter 44 and at the end of the year and move it into the new one that was constituted under Chapter 71, Section 47.
Thank you. Is there anything further to be said on my right?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Through you to the body, Jane Donahue. I have two questions regarding this article. First, last week when we moved to create the new article, it was so that everything that was in the revolving account could then be spent down to zero. My first question is that previously 1% of that fund was left in the general fund each year. I'd like to know how much money that is. What is the 1% that would not have been spent previously that this new article will allow us to spend all of? Because you're transferring money from the general fund into the school budget, and people need to know how much that is.
To answer the question?
Financial people?
The revolving accounts that are under Chapter 44, the total amount that can be spent is the 1% of the tax levy. The money that is left in those accounts roll over the next year into the revolving accounts, do not go into the general fund. What limits the amount of spending in the account is the amount of money that comes in through fees.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Well, I respectfully disagree with the previous speaker, and since no one at the front of the room can respond, again, it is a transfer of funds from the town side to the school side. On this Article 23, last week, one of the school committee members suggested that we take these up in tangent, and we did not by ruling of the moderator. The account that we're moving funds from is specifically for preschool and kindergarten. The account that we're moving the funds to is a much broader account, and I would suggest that you take that into consideration before you vote. Thank you.
Thank you. To answer the question, or to speak to the question?
To answer the question, Madam Moderator.
To answer the question.
All right, Chapter 44, as all selectmen, past, present, and future should understand, is limited to 1% of the tax levy for any department that controls it. So if you have something where you're receiving funds, the revolver is to receive funds and then to spend those funds, and it's usually capped. We voted caps earlier on some other revolving funds tonight. Basically what's happening here is we're eliminating, because there's so many revolvers that were set up in the school under 44, and I will say they were not done correctly. We know that for a fact. It was not done correctly. They should have been put where all fees collected could be spent. Instead, they were put under the 44, which has that limitation. This is an effort to eliminate that error.
On my right.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Brenda Ekstrom. As I stated last week at the meeting, and I believe that as council read Mass General Law, Chapter 71, Section 47, nowhere in it does it say kindergarten and preschool. It says student activities. And what I would like to know is that if this is not going to be used for student activities, or if we have not already established this account as student activities, then where have the money orders that parents have been paying for student activities, what account have they gone into? Because I have concerns with that. We're not allowed to write personal checks as parents. We have to write money orders, and so therefore they're more difficult to track. I don't know what type of accounts they're going into. I don't know if they're going to the town general fund or into a different student activities that's never been approved at town meeting. And I do have concerns with kindergarten being lumped in as a student activity, especially seeing we get federal and state grants for pre-K, for kindergarten, Head Start, all of those things. Are those going to be continued into the general budget, or are they going to be part of this revolving account that it won't ever come back in front of here?
Thank you. Anything further to be said on Article 23? Seeing no one else standing, I'll now call for a vote. Article 23 is to be voted as printed in the warrant to see if the town will vote to transfer the account balances of the preschool and kindergarten tuition revolving account into the newly established account that was established last week. Requires a majority vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. The chair is in doubt. I'm going to ask for a hand count. All those in favor, please raise your cards up high. Section 1.
33.
Section 133. Section 2.
41.
Section 2, 41. Section 3.
101.
Section 3, 101. Section 4.
41, 41.
Section 4, 41. All those opposed, please raise your cards. Section 1.
7.
Section 1, 7. Section 2.
23.
Section 2, 23. Section 3.
28, 28.
28. Section 4.
27.
27. Section 4, 27. 216 in the affirmative and 85 in the negative. The motion carries. Article 6.
Madam Moderator, I move that the town vote to raise and appropriate $46,428,704. Transfer from available funds $773,000 to defray charges and expenses of the town, including debt and interest, and to provide for a reserve fund for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2012 and ending June 30th, 2013, and as more practically described in the 4/30/2012 FY 2013 April Town Meeting budget handout.
Do I have a second? To speak to Article 6, Mr. Sullivan?
Through you, Madam Moderator, to the body. I will keep this brief. The fiscal 2013 budget has represented many hardships. I believe everybody here has heard them. There was a multi-million-dollar budget gap that needed to be closed. And that gap has been closed. It has been closed because people work together. Boards, committees, the school and town administration work together to solve the budget problem. They worked and compromised to close that gap. This budget is a representation of that work and those compromises. One thing is certain, none of us are happy about this budget. There are losses of personnel and there are losses of services to the town. But this is what we're able to do with the revenue that we have. I ask that everybody consider these particulars when going over the budget. One more part that we should go over stems from the Upper Cape tech budget that was voted on last Monday. The funding was reduced by $220,346 to level funding of FY12. We need to consider that the rest of the towns may vote in favor of this budget. If they do, and we've appropriated those funds, then we'll be faced with a budget deficit and we'll need to hold a special town meeting to make budget reductions. The solution as we've had is to place those funds in the Finance Committee Reserve Fund so that they can be replaced to pay for the Upper Cape Tech if needed. There was a handout out front which shows the new budget in there. The Finance Committee budget is now for Reserve Fund transfer is $320,346. Thank you.
Does everyone have a copy of the new budget? If not, would the tellers run out and get a couple copies and bring them in and give them to anyone that might need them? What I'm going to do is go through the budget line item by line item. If there is a particular department that you have a question on, please holler hold. Once we get through the line items, we will take a vote on all of those items that are not being held. Then we will go back to the items that are being held and discuss them and then take a vote on those. Is there anybody that needs a budget handout?
Point of order, Madam Moderator.
State your point.
I'd like to ask if we could take a 5-minute recess, seeing this budget that's out there is the first that some of us have seen it. We have had it in our book to review, but I just found a couple of things that are different, and so if we could just take like 5 minutes to look at it, please.
I think the only difference, Mr. Sullivan, is the Upper Cape.
We passed over the cemetery article of $15,000 from transfer of funds. So in order to balance the budget, $15,000 was reduced from the expense line of municipal maintenance and public buildings budget.
And that's the only difference, correct, along with the Upper Cape?
Those would be the only two from
The only
last.
two differences. So I think those are the only two differences. I think we can move forward. Does everyone have a copy? Anyone else need a copy? Okay, on page 2, budget 2, town meetings wages, town meeting expenses, selectmen's wages, selectmen's expenses, town administrator wages, town administrator expenses, finance committee, reserve fund, town accountant wages, town accountant expenses, audit, assessors wages, assessors expenses, revaluation expense, treasurer wages, treasurer expenses, financial services director, general services wages, general services expenses, legal services, personnel services wages, personnel services expenses, personnel board, information management technology wages, information management technology expenses, information management tech communication, town clerk wages, town clerk expenses, elections and registrations wages, elections and registrations expenses, town planning wages, town planning expenses, planning board expenses, Board of Appeals, sick leave bonus wages, police wages, police expenses, inspectional services wages, inspectional services expenses, animal control wages, animal control expenses, shellfish harbor master wages, shellfish harbor master expenses, beaches and lifeguards, the second line of beaches and lifeguards, herring commission, municipal maintenance and public buildings wages, municipal maintenance and public buildings expenses, municipal maintenance special articles, snow and ice wages, snow and ice expenses, street lights general, recycling wages, recycling expenses, Board of Health wages, Board of Health expenses, Council on Aging wages, Council on Aging expenses, Veteran Services expenses, Commission on Disabilities, library wages, library expenses, Historical District Commission, Historical Committee, net school spending, non-net school spending, school capital, debt principal, debt interest, long-term, debt interest short-term, middle school debt, community health services, revenue deficits, regional landfill, SERPED assessment, retirement contribution, LIUNA, workman's compensation, town insurance general liability, unemployment, medical insurance, life insurance, FICA, county and state assessments, other cherry sheet, and then the rest were all other budget articles that came before us. Let me see on the back. The enterprise fund and revolving fund offset receipts. Okay, and now we'll take a vote on all of the articles that no one asked to be held. Requires a majority vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. Those pass. We'll go back to the first item that was held, which is Selectmen's expenses. Am I right?
Sandy Slavin, Precinct 3. I'm quite surprised at a 50% increase in the budget for Selectmen's expenses. 50% is a lot, and I noticed they're over budget already, but I don't know, going from 66 to 99, that's 50%, and I don't think anybody else has gotten that.
Town administrator wages. Council advises it probably should go back and take a vote as we go through each one. So we'll go back to Selectmen's expenses. All those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed?
Madam Moderator, point of order.
State your point.
I think we need to pass the budget as a whole and not piecemeal. I don't understand the ruling that we're going to vote in favor of everything that wasn't held. In the past, we've always held articles, line items, then voted on the budget as a whole, once there were amendments made to each line item. This leaves us with very little leeway for other things that have to happen. And I would also like to, that's my point of order.
Thank you. Town administrator wages. To speak to the town administrator wages.
Well, I think, Madam Moderator, I think maybe I was expecting, and maybe other people were expecting to hear some sort of a discussion or response, or do I need to make a motion amendment that we don't do it this way? I'm not sure how exactly to proceed.
In the meetings that I have moderated, Mrs. Donahue, this is the way that we've done it. I've also, other towns, other moderators, this is the format that they follow, and this is what we followed the last time with our last operating budget, which is why I'm doing it the same way again.
Well, then I would like to respectfully suggest that I have some questions about the budget before we start voting on every line item, if I may.
Well, we're going through them one by one, so you can ask any question on any line item that was held.
I would like to know some general questions, though, like, for example, we talked very briefly about personnel losses and services cut. Can we have some more specifics about exactly what that amounts to and where they are?
Oh, you're certainly welcome to stand and ask that question, certainly.
Thank you, I'm asking it.
To answer the question?
I'll speak for the town side. Through you, Madam Moderator. There is one full-time position lost in the Selectman's office. We had planned for a personnel director this year that we are not funding. In information management technology, there is a part-time position that we are not funding. Town planning, there is a part-time position that we are not funding. In the police department, there's one lieutenant and 2 patrol officers that are not being funded. In the Council on Aging, there's a position that is not being funded. And this year, for the waterfront community, we are not having beach lifeguards.
And the services that are being cut, please?
That would be the beach lifeguards.
What other services? That's the only service that's being cut?
That would be the only service from the town side that I would know about.
Okay, my understanding was that we were talking about closing town hall on Fridays. Is that not happening?
That would have to be negotiated with the unions. That is one that we are looking at.
Is it built into this budget, Mr. Sullivan?
It would be built into this budget. Town hall is closed on Friday with a $40,000 reduction.
So it is built into this budget already, and then it has to be negotiated with the unions as well.
You're correct.
Thank you. I just wanted to call that to the attention of everybody who's sitting here tonight, that when we're talking about drastic, or I can't remember exactly what the word that was used here, some compromises. These are drastic cuts. When you go to knock on the door at Town Hall on Friday and it's closed, you were here. So just remind yourself that this is what we're talking about when we're talking about this budget. And when I said earlier this evening that there hasn't been a whole lot of discussion about this prior to our voting on other financial issues, this is what I meant. So maybe some of you were informed and maybe some of you weren't, but this is a big deal to be cutting the town by this much. Excuse me. I haven't heard a lot of anything from our Finance Committee for recommendations on this, except that they voted in favor of this. And I haven't heard any other options in terms of potentially offering people early retirements, maybe doing some things differently. But where are we going to be next year with the town's budget, ladies and gentlemen? Are we going to be having an override for all of the things that we can outsource in the same manner that the school department is doing this year? And is everybody going to be willing to, pony up then? I just think that we need to be looking at the big picture, and so far the focus has all been on a very small piece that has excluded the town side. So I apologize for taking up so much of your time, but I do want you to know what the ramifications are of this budget if we pass it the way that it is. Thank you.
Thank you. Selectman Bagley?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Mr. Sullivan, just to elaborate, we, the Finance Committee, the Board of Selectmen, and some members of the School Committee were faced with these budget shortfalls several weeks ago, a few months ago. And this budget was presented to us with even more drastic cuts. And Mr. Sullivan, are there still 6 seasonal police officers that will not be hired, or is that back in the budget?
To answer the question?
Through you, Madam Moderator, excuse me, you are correct. There's 6 seasonal police officers that would not be hired this year that they had planned on.
So those are further cuts. So we have a lieutenant and 2 full-time police officers, 6 seasonal police officers. Is that correct? We have a full-time position in the town accountant's office, a part-time position in the IT, part-time for planning, not funding the personnel department, town hall closed on Fridays. So that was the budget that we were presented with when we had a $2.4 million difference with shortfall still. And that's when the school department started working on their budget. But they're supplementing that with a debt exclusion and an override. The town side does not have that right now. So when you're looking at this budget and looking at, for example, the selectmen's expenses.
Point of order, Madam Moderator.
State your point.
Madam Moderator, the ramifications of each line item, given the amount of cuts and services that are going to be reduced from that line item. For example, one of the holes that we have is for the police department. Certainly, we could ask the question when we're debating the police department whether or not there is going to be cuts, whether or not positions are going to be filled, and what services are going to be reduced because of the budget shortfall. This general information can be very well adapted to each individual line item as we go forward. So I think that right now all of this discussion is out of order, and that all of these questions and all of these concerns could be answered as we go through the individual line items. Thank you, Madam Moderator.
Thank you.
May I continue?
Yes.
So we've already discussed the selectmen's expenses. We had a vote on that, and it's $2,000 increase. However, remember that the selectmen wages were decreased significantly because we are not hiring a full-time position. So when you look at this budget and you look at any other budgetary concerns that this town meeting may address, look at the cuts that have already been made, and they are significant, ladies and gentlemen, to services for personnel. We're a tourist community. We're going to have 6 seasonal police officers off the streets. So I will discuss that when that line item comes up again.
20 seconds.
So please remember that there are no other places really right now to cut in town services and please think of these as human beings. When we ask the unions to decrease and we negotiate, we're asking them to sacrifice along with the rest of us. They also have families. Thank you.
Mr. Heath?
Yes, Madam Moderator. I'd like to make clear what happens with the FinCom. First off, the FinCom is not involved in the day-to-day at all. Basically, what happens is a budget is proposed to us, and we do review it and to see if it is a sound budget. That process starts sometime in December. There's an all-day meeting in December that occurs in the school department. It's 8 hours long, open to the public. There is a town department heads meeting that's held in January, once again, open to the public. And we go over line item by line item, starting where they would like to be and eventually getting down to where this budget is. In the meantime, we have 2 public hearings. We had one in January, and we had one just last month. Not very well attended, I will say that. The budgets or the questions we're going to answer tonight have been discussed in the Finance Committee. Go back and review the televised meetings that we've put forward. We're very concerned with this. We're very concerned with the cuts in services. We're very concerned with the cuts in personnel. But we're also even more concerned with the number on page 1, which we haven't talked about at all, and that's the revenue. The question was, we had only X amount of revenue. How could we get there on the expenditure side? There was a lot of blood. There was a lot of discussions as to what the town administrator and what the superintendent of the schools had to do, because they're the 2 people that are the CEOs and responsible to decide how these monies are going to be doled out under the direction of the school committee and the board of selectmen. I didn't hear the name finance committee in there. All right, what we had to do was to go through, and we did. We went through with great diligence. They answered a tremendous number of questions. I will tell you this budget has been thoroughly vetted, with the exception of what happened with the vocational school. And I would ask you to stand behind these numbers. These numbers are very painful.
Okay. I want to go back to the line items, Mr. McDonald. I allowed Selectman Begley to speak as a selectman, and we've heard from the FinCom, and I'd like to go back because I believe all these questions can be brought up under the line items. So we're back to town administrator wages. Someone had a question on that. Am I right?
Michelle Langford. I noticed that the town administrator wages are increasing substantially. Is there an explanation for that?
To answer the question?
I'd like a pay raise like that.
Mrs. Langford, please.
Sorry.
There are 4 people listed in the town administrator's office. There's steps increases. The town administrator position had an increase. My position had an increase. And that's where it would be.
Am I right?
Thank you. I would like to, if I wanted to amend that line, do I just make a motion to amend and then, is that how we're doing it? Because I'm not sure of.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Then I'd like to amend that for the FY13 proposed to be $200,000 on the wages line.
Do we have a second?
Thank you. The reason being is because while the previous speaker just said that there are 4 people in that office, the selectman's office was combined with the town administrator's office a couple of years ago. And there are 2 clerks in the main office, and I believe either a part-time or a temporary per diem, maybe a senior work-off clerk also. I would think that with that, then the town administrator's office would be able to utilize those people if there needed to be any letters or anything. And I know that the previous town administrator typed his own letters, and that all the postings are done by the Board of Selectmen's employees, by the clerks in that office. So I think that we can eliminate one of the positions in the town administrator's line.
Is there anything to be said to Mrs. Ekstrom's amendment on my left?
Stanley Andrews, Cranberry Highway. If we're in such bad financial position, why are we giving out raises?
Ladies and gentlemen, please. Mr. Heath?
To answer the gentleman's question, the raises that are in here for the clerks are from the contracts for the last 3 years. All right, we don't seem to negotiate our contracts ahead, we always seem to negotiate them in the rear. And that's basically where their raises came from. We're also looking in this particular department, in case no one's noticed, we lost our town administrator. So we're going to hire a new town administrator. The wages will be relatively the same. And the question is if we cut out one person, we wind up probably cutting out the person who's most knowledgeable about what happened in the last town administrator's office. So what happens is we start the new person off in the hole, knowledge-wise, because we saved a few dollars. But in the end, we won't save the dollars because he's got to be brought up to snuff. And it's going to take time.
Maybe I misunderstood, but I thought he stood up and said that he was getting a raise and everybody in that department was getting a raise. I think that's the statement he made.
And I believe Mr. Heath stated, I answered your question, that it was due to contracts. Mrs. Winslow?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I think it's important to understand that while we are facing very difficult financial outlook for this upcoming year, that the town administrator wages are not that high. In fact, when this line item was built, it was built based on the existing town administrator's contract, and he's since left. The Board of Selectmen is going to have to go out and hire a town administrator, and it includes 1.5 other employees. So just keep that in mind when you're looking at these budget line items, that they're not increasing exponentially, and many of these departments have already faced cuts. And while it sounds like there's a lot of people in the offices, there's really not in any of the town hall offices. And as far as the contracts go and the step increases and contractual increases, those are obligations that we have and we can't turn back on them. So we own those obligations at this point. Thank you.
Am I right?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I believe the statement was first made was that there are 4 people in the town administrator's office. Now it was just said that there's 2.5 or 3.5. How many people are in there? I'm familiar with the ones in the selectman's office. There are 2 clerks in there. How many people? There is the financial analyst, the town administrator, and who else?
To answer the question?
There's an administrative assistant, and there's 4 people altogether. I've only got names. I don't have the titles written down. You'll have to excuse me.
Okay, again, I would respectfully request the body to consider cutting the $42,000, the administrative assistant. The 2 women in the selectman's office are quite capable, and my understanding for the last year, or approximately the last year, have done that administrative assistant job. Thank you.
Am I right, Mrs. Bronk?
Ladies and gentlemen, to do this, you would be doing a disservice. This article, the very individuals that are looking to cut are the individuals that put the person in place that was there and is gone now. You've got some real good people in this town working.
Mrs. Bronk, to speak to
Don't-
the
The selectmen's,
amendment.
the selectmen's office, don't cut their legs out from underneath them, and don't cut the administrations. You've got really good people here, and they're bound by unions, and we have to honor the union contract. Let's be fair, and take it from its source. We've all looked at this, and we've looked at it, and they've made adjustments. Respect the people that you voted in office, your selectmen that are here now, and the people that are running this town. Respect their decisions, and please vote down this amendment.
Selectman Holmes?
Thank you, Madam Moderator, through you to the body. I think in my opening remarks, I spoke about challenges and changes, and it can be exciting times, and I thanked all those people who have put in thousands and thousands of hours. So I speak to the amendment, and I don't support it. What I asked you to do was support the people who are in here every day and in the evenings and on the weekends working on this budget to try to make it work. And I believe they have. And I supported them, and I support their efforts, and to jump out of a seat and make cuts without actually knowing what those cuts are going to do, I think is a dangerous road to go down. So I ask you to support the people who have put all the hours into this to make this budget work, and give them a shot. They make the numbers work, let them enforce it, and keep the numbers where they are, and I think that we'll be fine. Thank you.
Ms. Cattouli?
I would just, through you, Madam Moderator, ask the financial analyst to figure in what the unemployment cost is going to be and add that to the other side for losing one member in that particular office.
To answer the question?
Unemployment costs usually run about a third of the salary, so if it was a $40,000 salary, you'd look at $13,200. You'd also have to factor in there if that person has days to be paid out, vacation time, which some of them could have. I think one payout was $10,000. So you could look at $23,000. So your savings would be $17,000 for roughly for 40,000 cut.
Thank you. On my right?
Madam Moderator, through you to the body, I do think that there are some cuts that are already made that we might want to reinstate, and I would strongly suggest that if we were to be able to cobble together enough money, we should put those 6 seasonal police back on their bikes.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're on town administrator wages.
I understand that, Madam Moderator, and what I'm suggesting is that if we are to support this amendment, we could then increase the police budget in order to support the 6 seasonal police. And I think that we've had issues in the past. That is one area that we definitely would not want to slide back in. So I would urge you to support this amendment, and then let's think about where else we might, and no disrespect meant to anybody who's put in hundreds of hours. I've been one of those people who put in hundreds of hours. I have all the respect in the world for people who do this. But I think that sometimes you could do a little bit more juggling around and get what we really need. And public safety is a huge priority for this town. We all know what happens when there's no seasonal police on bikes. Thank you.
On my left?
Madam Moderator, Mike Flaherty, I move the question.
Thank you. We have a motion to move the question. It's not debatable. It requires a 2/3 vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? It passes. We are now have before you the amendment that is on the floor to reduce the town administrator wages to $200,000. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. The amendment fails. You now have before you the original town administrator wages of $242,137. All those in favor? All those opposed? Passes. Town accountant wages. state your point.
I'm sorry. Sandy Slavin, I don't remember voting on the selectmen's expenses.
Yes, we did. It passed.
Oh, I guess I must have napped.
Passed by a majority. Town accountant wages. Am I right?
Hi, Michelle Langford, District 4. What happened here? Expenses and wages kind of flip-flopped. It looks like something was combined.
To answer the question?
Does anybody know?
Through you, Madam Moderator, to the body, if you're looking in the column titled FY12 projected, this year we hired a firm, BMAG, which is represented as Justin Cole. They have to be paid out of the expense section. They cannot be paid out of personnel line. So that's why you would see essentially the flip-flop there, as you will.
Okay, so why does it go back to wages for next year?
We have posted for a town accountant. We hope to hire an individual, not a firm, for FY13.
Okay, thank you.
Sir, any other questions? Am I right?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Jane Donahue, through you to the body. I'd like to make an amendment. I understand that this posting, well, I move to amend the $168,110, reduce it by $10,000. Madam Moderator, I understand that the town accountant posting has been put out there at $90,000 plus, and I think we could do fine with an $80,000 town accountant. And again, I ask the body to consider using whatever money we can scrape up to get our seasonal police back online. Thank you.
Mrs. Selectman Winslow?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Through you to the body, the Board of Selectmen had a conversation about this very issue about 6 weeks ago. We'd gone out in a search for a town accountant on at least 2, possibly 3 occasions, and had been unable to attract the talent that the search committee is looking for. It was decided at that point to raise the salary to the $90,000 to $95,000 range in a posting. And once we did that, people applied to that position. Those people are expecting to be paid the salary that we advertised, and that was $90,000 to $95,000. The screening committee has resumes, is conducting interviews, and may possibly have a successful candidate from this round. Are we to tell this person that we didn't really mean to advertise it at $90,000? So please consider that as we go forward with the discussion on this line item, that the town was looking for something very particular in the town accountant. We raised the salary to attract that talent, and now we may have to make a job offer to somebody at less than what we even advertised it for. Thank you.
Mrs. Bronk?
Madam Moderator, to answer that amendment, we went the cheap route before, and what did we get?
Mrs. Bronk?
That's why we're here
Mrs. Bronk?
tonight. We need to hire a professional. You've got a Board of Selectmen responsible for hiring a professional. They've looked at the wages that the municipal administrators are getting, and that's where they came up with the figure. We advertised before at a much reduced rate. We didn't get any qualified applicants. You have to pay for good people.
Ladies and gentlemen, once again, I'm going to ask you to keep in mind what is before us, and please try to stay on track. Mr. McDonald.
One of the things that you have to consider too is that the DOR recommended this salary range due to certain factors, which we won't get into, but to attract the type of person that we needed, this is the range that the DOR suggested. So to cut it is basically going to cause problems. We're going to go back to where we were before. I just think this concept of coming out there and throwing out a number is detrimental to what went into the budget and what is going to come out of the budget. It's a very difficult process, and arbitrary numbers out of someone's head, I guess,
is not a good way to do this. I urge you to vote this amendment down.
Thank you. Mr. Gray?
As a member of the screening committee who was interviewing candidates for this job, I can tell you that we went through 3 different screenings and had a great deal of difficulty finding capable people who could do the job. I think that if we reduce the salary, first of all, we would have a problem with people who we've already interviewed, but I think we would have great difficulty in finding anyone who would be capable of handling the job.
On my left?
Mike Flaherty, Precinct 1. I move the question on the amendment.
Thank you. We have a motion to move the question. Again, it requires a 2/3 vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. The motion passes. We have before us the amendment to reduce the town accountant wages by $10,000. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. The amendment fails. You now have before you a motion for $168,110. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? It passes. Treasurer wages, I'm sorry, assessors wages. Is there anybody to speak to that? No one rises? Then we will take a vote on the assessors' wages as printed in your handout for $277,841. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? It passes. Treasurer wages. Am I right?
Sandy Slavin, Precinct 3. I may be confused on something. Are these values with Friday being closed? Are these salaries based on a 4-day work week?
To answer the question?
We have not closed for Friday. That's not budgeted in here. The closing Friday would not represent a salary reduction to employees. That there would be increased hours on Tuesday as well as throughout Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday. So the closing town hall Friday, as of right now, does not represent any salary reductions.
But then why close on, never mind, I was going to say why
It would
close
be
on
a
Friday?
utility savings, yes.
Is there anything further on treasurer wages? Seeing no one to rise, we'll now vote on the $283,353. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. It passes. Legal services. Am I right?
I'd just like to know, what is the town council's contract for this year? Last year, my understanding, it was $186,000. And the Board of Selectmen made a motion to reappoint town council for another year. Did that price go up? Because as far as the previous ones, I know that we had an increase in legal fees because of the years of contracts that had to be negotiated or whatever. But I was just wondering, is there an increase in that contract that the Board of Selectmen signed?
To answer the question? Attorney Bowen?
Madam Moderator, through you to the previous speaker, the contract price is the same. The rate hasn't changed. It's exactly as it was the previous year.
Then I would make a motion to reduce that by $10,000 because that as I said, the contract was for 186.
To speak to the amendment, Selectman Winslow.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. The reason that the 200,000 was put into the budget is because the one piece of our flat rate all-inclusive contract that's not covered by Attorney Bowen and his firm is the labor piece, the contract negotiation, personnel issues, and we do have a separate attorney that handles that matter. There are other small matters that sometimes are beyond the scope of the attorneys, and this has happened throughout history. So we do need extra money in that budget in order to pay those attorneys. If you don't pay the attorneys, then they don't show up, and it could be far more expensive for us if we didn't have that legal advice. Thank you.
Is there anything further to be said? Seeing no one standing, your vote now comes on the amendment to reduce the legal services line item by $10,000. All those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed? The amendment fails. We're now back to the original line item in legal services of $200,000. All those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed? It passes. Next one is information management technology wages. On my left. No? Seeing no one standing, then the vote will come on what is printed in your handout is $70,445. All those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed? Passes. Information management technology expenses.
Madam Moderator.
Selectman Slavin.
Madam Moderator, through you to the Town Administrator. This particular increase,
Can you speak right into the microphone, please? Thank you.
This particular increase, is this actual expense or is this a capital expense due to the virtualization system?
You need to speak right into the microphone.
Is this a capital expense or is this an expense due to the virtualization system, which should be part of the original capital appropriation?
To answer the question?
The majority of the increase is a result of software licenses, which is part of the virtualization program.
Is there anything further?
My question again is, if it is part of the original virtualization and we appropriated last year $400,000 and have another $60,000 or so in increased costs of the original project, why is this an expense and not coming back for an appropriation for an overrun on the system?
Thank you, Mr. Slavin.
To answer that question, I really don't know. It's a large item. It was part of the virtualization program when it was originally bid out. Without those licenses, the virtualization system will not operate, and it is a substantial amount of money.
On my right.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Through you to Mr. Foster. Question, you don't really know, but does that mean that it should be included in the $400,000 or that there's possibly too much money in this budget item?
To answer the question?
The original amount of money that we were allowed to borrow on this, it was a debt issue, was $400,000. I think the total costs of the entire project are in excess of $500,000. So the town has already expended $400,000 and they need additional funds to pay for the remainder of the project.
So then, if I may, Madam Moderator, through you, why would this not be coming under an additional capital item, and why is it in the operating budget?
To answer the question?
The answer to that would be how that article was voted. When looking at it, we actually looked and said, how was it voted? What was the appropriation? And licenses, and so the Microsoft system licenses were not, it looks like they were not a part of them. So we'd have to try and figure out, is it going to be bonded as an additional expense, or will it be part of the budget? Microsoft granted us a 3-year, I believe, lease of the licenses on there, and that's how we've been able to do this. We need to budget for those, because if we don't have them, basically our computers will not turn on.
Got that part. But one more question, if I may, Madam Moderator. That means in 3 years we'll be re-upping for the licenses, correct?
There will be a much lower fee. Also, what's granted through this is that when Microsoft 2015 comes out, we will get that without having to pay for the extra, the much higher amount on there. So if we had to do every single computer, let's say be roughly $100,000, that would be part of the whole package. So it's kind of a continued license monitoring.
Thank you, Mr. Sullivan.
Well,
Am I right?
Mike Flaherty, through you to the town administrator, the interim town administrator. I understand you weren't here when that all transpired, but I believe another party was involved. Was the Director of Information Technology involved on that? And if he would speak to the discrepancy, I'd appreciate it.
To answer the question?
Thank you.
Now moderate to the speaker, Matthew Underhill, Director of Information Technology. Those are licenses for Microsoft that are basically to answer the question, no, I was not involved in the actual procurement process, but the licenses were amortized over a 3-year period, and that's what the difference is between last year's budget and this year's.
Thank you. Is there anything further to be said on information management technology? Seeing no one else to speak, we'll take a vote on information management technology line item as $262,926. All those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed? Passes. Sick leave bonus wages. See no one rising to speak to that line item. Then I will take a vote on sick leave bonus wages in the amount of $71,250. I'm sorry, am I right?
Thank you. The sick leave bonus wages, my understanding is that the department heads have gotten into a union that hasn't had any negotiations, or hasn't completed negotiations. I'm wondering if this covers those positions, or if there are other positions, and if it does cover these positions, if we negotiate it as a union and eliminate the idea of a sick leave bonus, could we eliminate this line item?
To answer the question.
Madam Moderator, through you, the previous speaker, and I make this comment with the greatest of respect. Since this is a matter that's currently under negotiation, I wouldn't want to comment on either an executive decision to eliminate this or the consequence if we did so.
Am I right?
Eddie Pasevich, Precinct 1. Could you define what a sick leave bonus is? I've never heard of it before.
To answer the question?
It's for a cash payout for days not utilized by an employee. Some people have, at one point we had contracts that paid 100% of their unused sick time. Some individuals have 50%, and some of the newer contracts have 25% payback.
Am I right?
Just to follow up with that, would you consider that the sick leave buyback then?
To answer the question?
Okay, thank you.
Nothing further being said on sick leave bonus wages. We'll now take a vote on line item in the amount of $71,250. All those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed? It passes. Police wages. On my left.
Frank D. Felice, I gotta put my specs on for this, and I'm not looking to get a ticket on the way home, by the way. But, as I read this on the wages, if I am looking at it right, fiscal year 12 projected is $4,088,541, and the proposed is $4,064,528. That's roughly a $20,000 difference. Now, if we're getting rid of 6 seasonal officers, 1 lieutenant, and 3 police officers, how does that figure come up with like that? I just need an explanation, and that's it, believe me.
To answer the question?
Through you, Madam Moderator, quick clarification. We are not funding a lieutenant's position. We're not getting rid of that position. The next spot is we did have, through arbitration, a settlement for the police contracts. So if we level funded last year with an addition to these contracts, you'd probably be looking at closer to $4,164,000 on that part alone. You'll also see in the FY12 projected that there is approximately $80,000 more in police expenses than what was budgeted. We're doing a transfer out of the police wages into their expenses. So altogether, you'd see about $4,169,000 that was budgeted in FY12. If you put roughly $100,000 on there, that'd be $4.27 million. That right there is about a $200,000 reduction.
Thank you. Am I right?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Jane Donahue, Precinct 3. I know that right now we haven't cut anything anywhere else to increase the police budget, but I am going to ask for reconsideration on the $150,000 that we put into the stabilization fund for this, not knowing where we were when we voted on that. So I just thought I would make the body aware. Thank you.
Anything further to be said on police wages? Mr. Sullivan?
There is one aspect of the 6 seasonal officers that we should, have clarified. In FY12, the seasonal police were funded at $89,472. The FY13 request was $119,431. What is actually budgeted in the FY13 budget is the same level funded amount as FY12, $89,472. So that's $29,959 from the request. And when we broke it down hourly, it was approximately the same as having 6 more seasonal police officers. There's a reduction from what was requested, what would the chief of police believed would help the department. However, it is not less seasonal police than there were the previous year.
Thank you. Anything further to be said on police wages? If not, we'll now take a vote on the line item police wages in the amount of $4,064,528. All those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed? Passes. Police expenses. Am I right?
Sandy Slavin, Precinct 3. Are there any capital expenditures in this $419,000?
To answer the question?
For FY13, there would be none in there. The capital expenditures are listed under the other budget articles. That's the police leases. In the special town meeting, there is a truck coming forward because of an emergency issue. The police lost their pickup through no fault of their own driver. It was totaled, and we received only $9,000 for that. So in this budget, no, there would not be any capital listed as of right now. That would be the only one that I could foresee for the police.
Anything further? Seeing no one on my right?
Madam Moderator, through you to Mr. Sullivan, the reduction of 400 from 482,000 down to 419,000, or the actual figures in FY11 from 455 to 419, what are we cutting out? What are we not buying this time?
Part of this was an upgrade to the communications, I believe, cost $16,000 in FY12. We also did have a higher amount of, one of the expenditures was the stairs to the police department. I'm sure we've all seen those repairs. And if I'm continuing with the rest, I believe that we had additional expenses for what I'm trying to see here, but I think it was the matrons, additional expenses of $12,500. That would be coming before the special town meeting as well.
Thank you. Anything further? If not, we'll call for a vote on police expenses. The line item of $419,968. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Passes by unanimous vote. Inspectional services wages. See no one standing to speak, then I will take a vote on inspectional services wages in the amount of $223,928. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Passes unanimously. Inspectional services expenses. See no one standing to speak. I will take a vote on the line item inspectional services expenses in the amount of $43,723. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Passes unanimously. Shellfish Harbor Master wages. I see no one standing to speak. We will now take a vote on the line item of Shellfish Harbor Master wages in the amount of $209,917. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Passes unanimously. Beaches and lifeguards. On my right.
Eddie Pasevich. Just a question on this. If we don't have beaches and the lifeguards, does that open the town up for a liability issue as far as the public using the beaches?
To answer the question.
Madam Moderator, through you to the previous speaker. The question of liability and the question of whether someone would actually sue are, of course, two different ones. But the liability issue, it is something that we looked at carefully. And there's a statute known as the Recreational Landowners Liability Statute, which provides that as long as the recreational landowner doesn't charge for the use of the particular recreational facility, the landowner, which in this case would be the town of Wareham, is exempt for liability for anything other than open and gross negligence. The classic example is someone lets people use a field and someone falls down a well that the landowner knew about. So when this was first raised, the first thing that we tried to figure out was whether the town actually charged for the use of the beaches. And the answer to that was no. And then the next question was, does the town charge for the use of the beaches by means of so-called beach parking permits? And the answer to that is no. The permits themselves don't reference the word beach. They are parking permits.
Okay, there's no dollar amount in that line item. We'll move on to Heron Commission. Am I right?
Sorry, Madam Moderator, I'd just like to back up for 1 second to the beaches. The $20,000, is that to clean the beaches? Are we not going to have our beaches cleaned?
To answer the question?
No, those expenses did not have anything to do with the cleaning the beach. Municipal maintenance handles cleaning the beaches, and they will be cleaned.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to Heron Commission. Am I right?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I'd like to amend this to bring it to 0.
There was no dollar amount.
Madam Moderator, point of order.
Okay. Hang on 1 second. Let's go back to beaches and lifeguards
Oh, okay.
before we move on. Council said we should take a vote, even though there's no dollar amount and it's 0. All those in favor of beaches and lifeguards, please say aye. All those opposed? Passes by majority. Heron Commission. Now, Mrs. Ekstrom, your amendment, you wanted to reduce that down to 0?
Yes.
And I believe I heard a second?
Yes.
Thank you. To speak to your amendment?
Thank you. A few years ago, the Board of Selectmen asked the Heron Commissioners to come in to find out exactly what they did. That they couldn't really even tell us what they did. I understand that most of the stuff is handled by the Harbor Master, which addresses the herring runs. And I think that a couple nights ago, when we had asked for money for the selectmen for expenses, I don't think that the Herring Commission, that these commissioners should get any money. I think that, I know it's not a lot, but the most we could find on a Herring Commission was that it dated back to the 1600s. And the reason why they didn't want us to dissolve the commission was because of the historical aspect, which I can appreciate, but I don't think that there needs to be any money there, seeing we have the Harbor Master who handles all of the waterways, and him, and with the expenses, that they can handle that. And for the most part, my understanding is they do.
Is there anything further to be said on the line item for Herring Commission, or anything on the amendment? On my left?
To my understanding, Jack Dixon is the herring commissioner. We have a herring run that goes through our property, and the man puts a lot of time into watching that. I'm not going to argue if herring are endangered or not, but it appears that they are, and Mr. Dixon puts his heart and soul into watching those herons. So what was just said is not true. There's a lot put into it by these people. Thank you.
On my right?
Good evening, Gary Buckminster, Harbor Master. Last year when the budget was passed, they forgot to put the herring agent's budget forth. So I have been picking up the duties of it. That's why I was late tonight. I was actually clearing out the herring runs. What this covers is the cost of the herring agents. We have, like Mr. Tucci stated, Jack Dixon and another gentleman that oversee the operation of the runs. That's working with Division of Marine Fisheries, that's working with the bog owners, that's working with the owners of property that do have runs going through to try and get these fish up. We also put out fish counters to try and manage and oversee what's going on with the fish moving up the rivers. Thank you.
Anything further to be said on the amendment, Mrs. Cattouli?
I just want to ask a question, if Mr. Buckmeister would be able to answer that, and that is there some sort of state or federal mandate that says the town has to have a herring commissioner, and if so, are we required to pay them?
We're not paying the commission. We're paying the agents to clean the runs, make sure that the ladders are free for fish passage, and they maintain the streams, the waterways, like I said, the ladders. They're working with they're working with different bog owners. We're not paying a commission. The commission is, I'm not sure who the commissioners are at this point either. So it's just another committee that they're not being paid for anything. It's just strictly employees maintaining it. They're separate from the commission.
Selectman Begley?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Don't go away, Gary. My question is this. Is this money kind of a stipend for the commissioners, or is this money for them to make the repairs, et cetera, et cetera?
We are not paying any commissions, nothing, no commissioners. We are paying herring agents, the gentlemen that go down and actually physically get into the runs. The commission is is a board, so we're just paying two gentlemen to make sure that the fish have clear passage, and they work maybe 8 hours a week. And there's a small line item for repairs. We have to buy lumber. We have to get different fiberglass repairs for some of the sleeves that go into the different runs.
Do the herring agents only work in Wareham?
Yes, only in Wareham.
So it's kind of, it's a volunteer position?
No, we've had agents for quite some time. The commission, I'm assuming it must be appointed.
Has it always been a paid position?
The agents, yes.
Always like $3,500?
I've reduced by $1,500, and I also dropped the
So it was
expense line item.
Mrs. Begley, if you could go through the moderator
Oh,
rather
sorry,
than a
sorry.
direct.
Okay, I'll ask you.
Yes.
So was it 5,000?
It was 5,000, yes.
Well, as much as 3,500 doesn't sound like a whole lot, it's with this budget, seriously?
I think it's very necessary. We're trying to get an endangered species up to spawn and try and rebuild a habitat.
Madam
I
Moderator.
don't think I'm asking too much to put $3,500 out there for gentlemen that are cleaning the runs and maintaining the areas and mowing. They really step up and do a lot. Like I said, I think it is necessary, yes.
Madam Moderator, through you, I'm not saying what these people, I'm not going to say gentlemen, are they two men, aren't doing a whole lot, but there are a whole lot of people. Look at the litter mob. There's a whole lot of people that are stepping up trying to help our town, especially in these dire financial straits that we're in. We all know that municipal maintenance is cut to the bone. And so instead of people just coming up to the selectmen or going to Mark Gifford and complaining, we've got people that have actually stepped up. So there's a lot of people that are doing things to benefit the town, and a lot of it is hard work. I mean, believe me, picking up couches out of woods,
20
etc.
seconds.
So I'm not disputing that they don't work hard, and okay, the herring are endangered, but $3,500 can go a long way in the rest of the budget. I vote for the amendment.
Time. Am I right?
Mike Flaherty, I move the question.
We have a motion before us to move the question. It requires a 2/3 vote. All those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed? The motion passes. We now will take a vote on the amendment that is before us to reduce the herring commission line item to 0. All those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed? The amendment fails. We now will have a vote on the herring commission line item as being $3,500. All those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed? Passes by majority. Snow and ice wages. I see no one rising on my right.
Point of order.
State your point.
Eddie Pasevich. I think we skipped municipal maintenance.
I'm sorry, you're right. We'll go back to municipal maintenance, public buildings. My apologies. The light up here in the print is a little small. Municipal maintenance, public buildings. Am I right?
Wages, right?
Wages.
Eddie Pasevich. There seems to be a substantial increase of almost a little over $200,000 between FY11 and the proposed FY13. Could we get an explanation of why that went up $200,000?
To answer the question?
Through you, Madam Moderator, yes, the union contracts were settled from 2007, I believe, through the end of FY10. With that came contractual obligations, including on-call and some overtime pay that also resulted in increased pay per person. And that was what was resulted. There's no new employees in there.
Thank you. On my right?
Hi, Michelle Langford again, District 4. On the municipal maintenance and wages, between 11 and 12, they went up 11 to 12%, and then now they're going to go up 15 to 16%. That seems like a really substantial increase. Did they increase the employees? I can't see contractual increases being so high.
To answer the question?
They did not increase any employees.
So their contract calls for that much of an increase? It seems extreme in these times. Usually it's 3%, 6% at most.
6% of, call it almost 800,000 would be 48,000, and then there's additional contracted obligations on there. I would have to research whether FY11 to FY12 were new employees. However, FY12 to FY13 were not new employees.
Then I just think it's really an extreme increase.
Thank you. On my left?
Madam Moderator, Irvin Russell, Precinct 6. Point of information. What is the remainder number of articles on this warrant beyond the budget?
About 14.
14 articles?
Yes.
And that's beyond the budget?
Yes.
Thank you.
Is there anything further to be said on my left?
Madam Moderator, I'd like to make a point of order.
State your point.
Madam Moderator, I know that the hour is getting late. We've got about 5 minutes until adjournment. I would like to move that we continue discussion on the budget until it's completed before we adjourn the meeting.
Do I have a second? Is you making that as a motion, Mr. Sabat?
I would make the motion to finish the budget before we adjourn.
To continue beyond the hour of 10 until we finish Article 6.
Correct.
Thank you. Do we have a second? All those in favor? All those opposed?
No.
The ayes have it. Anything further to be said on municipal maintenance? On my right?
Eddie Pasevich, Precinct 1. Could we have a number? You said there were no new employees. How many employees are currently working for municipal maintenance?
There are 13 in municipal maintenance, and included in this budget are also the town building of 4 for a total of 17 employees.
Is there anything further to be said? Seeing no one standing, we'll take a vote on municipal maintenance and public building wages in the amount of $899,228. All those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed? Passes by majority. Snow and ice wages. I see no one standing. I'm sorry, on my left?
Joe McDonald, Cremisa Road. I don't think this is a realistic budget. The FY13 budget's essentially the same as the FY12 projected. I think I picked up a shovel once this winter. To me, we'll never have a winter like this again. So it just seems low to me.
Thank you. Is there anything further to be said? Seeing no one standing, I now will call for a vote on snow and ice wages in the amount of $60,500. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Passes unanimously. Snow and ice expenses. On my right.
Eddie Pasevich, Precinct 1. On expenses, and just a point of information, does that involve the contract people that we have for plowing snow?
To answer the question?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no one else, I will now call for a vote on snow and ice expenses in the amount of $130,500. All those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed? Passes unanimously. Recycling expenses. On my right.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I'd like to reduce the recycling expenses to zero.
We have a motion before us to amend the recycling expenses to zero. To speak to your amendment.
Thank you. We have no employees in recycling. It is a volunteer position. In the revolving accounts, we just put $50,000 in the revolving account. I think that we can trim these expenses, and the money coming in and out can go from the revolving account. And I know that I'm sure people are very disgusted that I keep coming up here nickel and dime in this, but I just want to say that the reason why is I'm very concerned that if we have to close town hall for the, I believe Derek said that it was $40,000 would save by closing town hall one day. So if we can squeeze out $40,000, because the reality is it won't be $40,000. The school department's in there, so the cost will still be there, and the way that heating system is, it won't be there. So I'd like to ask the body's indulgence, and I apologize, but I would really like to take that recycling expenses and put it towards the building because, okay.
Yeah. Anything further to be said? Seeing no one standing, I now will call for a vote on the motion to reduce the recycling expenses to zero. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say no. No. The amendment loses. We're now back to recycling expenses in the amount of $5,000. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. Passes by majority. Counseling on Aging wages.
Andrea Smith, that's an almost $100,000 cut in salaries. I only heard one position being cut when they were speaking earlier. Is that only one position or is that several positions?
To answer the question?
Through you, Madam Moderator, that is one position, and then properly funding employees that are paid through grants and not appropriating for them.
How will this impact services provided by the COA? What is the position and how will it impact the services? These are services that go to very poor, very needy people, many of whom do not have anyone to advocate for them except the Council on Aging. And the Council on Aging cares for the poorest of the poor, not just the elderly, but of every age in Wareham. So how is this cut going to impact it?
To answer the question?
Through you, Madam Moderator, the only aspect that would be cut, I guess, in a way, if I may answer your question, what's still going to be there is there will be 2 full-time employees and there will be 4 part-time employees still there. Now, how this would impact services, it does not look like it'll be impacting services to the Council on Aging.
Thank you.
On my right?
That was my question.
On my left?
Madam Moderator, did you say that the positions won't be, what other positions that's being eliminated for full disclosure?
To answer the question?
The positions that we are funding, or rather, sir, I missed your question.
Or the positions you're eliminating?
The positions are not being eliminated, they're not being funded.
Okay, what are those positions?
The Council on Aging Director.
And
the other employees that are still there are...
But you said that the Council on Aging Director did not constitute 100,000 of that
No,
amount.
there was...
So there...
Excuse me, Madam Moderator, and I apologize for interrupting you.
I completed my thought.
Sir, that means there's positions that are funded through grants, and looks like we appropriated for them even though they were funded by grants. We should not appropriate for positions that are funded through the grants.
So would that be the person that was dispensing some services like Shine, or what grant positions were they from? The people that are being funded by the grant, that grant is coming from whom?
Elder Affairs.
And what are the services that they provided?
Sir, those services are still being provided. Those
May I-
aren't being reduced.
Excuse me, may I answer the question?
To answer the question?
Marcia Griswold, Precinct 5, Director of the Council of Aging and Social Services since 2008. Okay? The Shine position is a position we do not fund. We contribute things like stamps, envelopes, and what have you, but that is a state-funded piece. The Regional Director's Office is in Middleborough. The volunteers for Shine are trained through the Regional Office of Shine and are usually, hopefully, Wareham volunteers, people who live in our community. When I first came here in 2008...
To answer his question, please.
Okay.
And
The fuel assistance comes through the Office of Elder Affairs, a part-time assistant in the day program, adult daycare, 4 days a week, comes also through the Office of Elder Affairs.
Thank you. Did that answer your question, Mr. Russell?
It got closer to it. Yes, I am very much expressing a concern for any diminishment of services provided to the senior citizens of this community.
Thank you.
Madam Moderator?
Am I right?
May I respond to this article, please?
Yes.
Thank you. The budget cuts that you will suffer for the town of Wareham will affect those who are frail and vulnerable, our seniors, and also families or individuals living on a limited income.
State your point.
May I finish, Madam Moderator?
We have a point of order. Hold on 1 second.
Thank you. Thank you.
State your point.
Liz McDonald, Precinct 6. Previous speaker, when she approached the microphone, introduced herself as the Director of Council on Aging and Social Services. Last I knew, that was Susan Green in an acting position. Did this change, and when?
Thank you. That's not a point of order, Mrs. McDonald. Thank you.
Point of information.
Madam Moderator, do you wish me to respond?
Mrs. McDonald, please. I think we've answered your question.
Is she the Director?
Mrs. McDonald, please take a seat.
But she's speaking to something, as stated before this body, that she is the Director.
Mrs. McDonald, please. That's entirely up to her, what she feels that she needs to say, and we're not to question somebody that says anything on this floor. Anyone can state what they want to say. We have to take it at what we feel is face value or not face value. We're not here to judge what they say as being correct or incorrect. I've answered your point of order. You may take a seat. Please continue, Mrs. Griswold.
Thank you. Madam Moderator, I was not terminated. I did not resign.
Let's not get into that. We're here to talk about
I understand.
the issue before us, which is $45,000 line item budget.
Right.
That is the only thing that we are here to discuss.
Okay.
Please stick entirely to the comments to the line item itself.
I shall.
Thank you.
Okay. The only position that you will be cutting is the director. As a director, I often have worked and do work 7 days a week. Last Friday, I was in 4th District Court with an individual who is a resident in this community who needed the support and help to file some papers to prevent harassment. Okay? There are times that I have been involved in building things for people who are totally handicapped. This position that I hold provides services to anybody in this town. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm in your way. Anybody who comes into my office is treated objectively and provided with
Griswold,
services needed.
Please direct the conversation to the line item wages of $45,000.
What you are losing are services, advocacy, and the development of programs and learning opportunities for seniors and individuals in this community who live on limited incomes.
Are you okay? Okay. I believe on my right, gentleman on my right was next.
Thank you. Mike Flaherty, since we're discussing the position of the Director of Council on Aging,
We're not, Mr. Flaherty, we are talking about wages.
And this will eliminate that position effectively, correct?
To answer the question,
No, it will not fund the position.
It will not fund the position. To the previous speaker, through you, Madam Moderator, to the previous speaker, the self-described Director of Council on Aging.
Mr. Flaherty, please.
No,
Mr. Flaherty, we're not going to go there. We're not going to go there. We're talking about wages and what it will provide or what it will not provide. Please direct your comments to what it will provide or what it will not provide.
Never mind.
Thank you. Ms. Cattouli?
Through you, Madam Moderator, I'm going to ask directly on this floor to the town administrator or to the financial analyst what exactly is $45,000 funding? Because I have asked this question in committee at Finance Committee and have not got an answer. So I'm asking openly on this floor, what is $45,000 funding?
To answer the question,
One 35-hour-a-week position, one 19-hour-a-week position.
does that answer your question, Mrs. Cattouli?
What exactly are those job titles, please?
One is listed as a departmental assistant, and I do not have a job title for the 35-hour listed one.
Thank you. On my left?
Madam Moderator, I'd like to move the question.
Thank you. We have a motion before us to move the question.
Point of
Requires a
order.
two-thirds vote.
Point of order. Madam Moderator, I don't believe we have a quorum.
We have a motion before us, Mr. Pasevich. Let me take this motion. All those in favor of moving the question, please say aye. All those opposed? It passes. We now have a vote on the Council on Aging wages. All those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed? It passes by a majority. I believe we have one more that had a hold.
Madam Moderator, I had a point of order. I don't know.
State your point.
I don't believe we have a quorum. I don't know how we're voting on these monetary issues without 150 voters here. And I don't think we have 150. Could we have a quorum count, please?
We can, if you call for a quorum count, we can...
I do.
Call for a quorum count. Will the tellers please come forward? Ladies and gentlemen, if you please will stay in your seats. Raise your cards to be counted. Section 1,
4747.
Section 147, Section 2,
46.
Section 2, 46, Section 3,
97.
97, Section 4,
4747.
we have 237 voters in the hall. We do have a quorum. We will now move on to, I believe the next one is...
Madam Moderator, point of order.
Please state your point.
Prior to Mr. Pasevich asking for a quorum count, there were 7 people standing to request a vote count on the wages for the Council on Aging.
Okay, I'm sorry, I did not see that.
Well, it just, everything happened at once.
Okay. Okay, we're going to go back to Council on Aging wages, and I am going to call for a voice vote again. So it's Council on Aging wages for $45,000. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. It passes by a majority. So we now are on net school spending FY11. I see no one standing. I will call for a vote. On my right.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I would like to reduce this figure by $40,000. The reason being, oh, thank you. Sorry. Just a second.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. The reason being is because my understanding is that within the school budget, there is a line item for the school committee, and that the school committee, I think it's 2 members of the school committee go to Chicago every year.
Mrs. Ekstrom, we're here to talk about the final line item budget, so talk about the dollar figure.
And I am explaining why I would like to reduce it by the $40,000. I don't think it's fair for me to say reduce it by $40,000 and have a teacher think that I want to eliminate their position. What I'm eliminating is that annually, the school committee goes to the National Education Association, 2 members of it. My understanding is it go to Chicago for a week. And I think that where we're trimming the budgets, that is where I would like to see this money reduced by from the school department. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anything further to be said on the amendment? Am I right?
My name is Kristen Daggett in District 5. I have 3 children in the public schools, and I know a lot of us parents are already struggling with these numbers and how our children are going to be served, but to speak to the previous speaker, I don't think there's any way in this meeting that we can take the $40,000 away from the 2 people traveling. It's going to be taken away from the children and the teachers and the other resources. So I just want to put that point out there, that there's no way that this meeting is going to take that $40,000 away from a trip that's either with or without merit.
Thank you. Gentlemen, on my right?
It is true that in past years, a couple of people have gone to these valuable conferences. This year, the conference was in Boston. I went there. It was $625. I did not submit for my travel expenses, and we will certainly take this into consideration next year when I understand it's in San Diego. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anything further to be said? If not, the vote will come on the amendment to reduce the net school spending FY actual not broken down by $40,000. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. The amendment fails. We'll now take a vote on the line item, net school spending FY11 actual and broken down as $25,140,794. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. Passes by a majority. I think we have one more, medical insurance. No one called it. Medical insurance. I can find it. On my left.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Margaret Ishihara. Sorry to be asking a question so late in the evening. I'm just wondering why the huge increase in the medical insurance. I think I know the answer, but I thought it might be helpful to people. In the FY 2012 budget, it's $4,119,000. In this proposed budget, it's $5,702,000 and some odd. So over $1 million more. I just am looking for an explanation.
To answer the question, Mr. Heath? Or?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. The healthcare expense this year was only for 46 weeks. We had a healthcare holiday, and next year's 52 weeks, plus there was an annual increase from the health carrier for the full year premium. That's where the difference lies. Main one number is the 6 weeks.
Thank you. Am I right?
Madam Moderator, a question about procedure. I had mentioned earlier that I was hoping to get reconsideration of the stabilization funds. If we're only going to save $40,000 by closing Town Hall on Friday, then I respectfully request that we restore that $40,000 to the budget proper and only put $110,000 in the stabilization fund. I'm not sure how to amend the budget article as a whole to do that. Is that possible?
Point of order, Madam Moderator. We were discussing the health insurance, not stabilization.
I understand, Mr. Heath. I apologize.
Point of order, Madam Moderator. We were discussing.
Yes. If anyone else has anything else on the medical? If not, I will take a vote on the line item for medical in the amount of $5,702,865. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Passes by a majority. Now to state your point, am I right, Mrs. Donahue?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I apologize through you to Mr. Heath. I just didn't want to complete the budget article and have everybody leave and then not know how to go about amending the entire budget article through reconsideration of the stabilization fund. I would hope that everybody might agree that reducing the stabilization fund contribution by $40,000, if it could keep us from having to renegotiate with all of the unions their working hours and keep the town hall open to provide services on Fridays, that it might be worth trying to go through this process. Thank you. So shall I make a motion to do that, Madam
You
Moderator?
can make a motion, and then we'll see if it's appropriate. We have not acted on the stabilization fund. That's Article 8.
I believe
No, we have not.
we have not.
We have not.
So would you prefer that I wait until we act on the stabilization fund, or can we do it now?
Mr. Sullivan is advising me that the stabilization fund would not be part of this budget.
I understand that, but if it is part of the money that we were raising and appropriating, so
Okay, bear with us just one moment, please.
I turned into that already.
Yeah, I think in consultation, the only way we would be able to do it is when we got to the stabilization fund, then you would have to ask if we could reconsider the municipal maintenance line item in the budget.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I will do that.
I will, we have completed Article 6. I will now enter...
Madam Moderator, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn to tomorrow evening, May 1st at 7 p.m. at the Wareham High School. I'm tired.
Madam Moderator,
Auditorium.
point of order.
State your point.
Do we have to vote on this total budget?
We did.
We did. We voted each line.
Line item, thank you.
Madam
Okay,
Moderator,
okay.
I have a motion on the floor.
We don't have a second yet.
I do.
We do. Okay. Our financial advisor is advising me that we need to take a vote on the motion as it was presented. I move that the town vote to raise and appropriate $46,428,704 and transfer as it's up on the screen. We have to take a vote in its entirety up here.
Second.
I have a second. All those, what we're voting on is the article that's before you in its entirety. We have to take this for Department of Revenue reasons, that this is how we need to do it. So we have to vote on the article as it's presented in the motion. I move that the town vote to raise and appropriate $46,428,704 as it's on the screen. All those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed? The motion carries. Now I will entertain...
Madam Moderator, I would like to make a motion to adjourn to Tuesday, May 1st, 2012 at 7 p.m. in the Wareham High School Auditorium.
Second. All those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed? We'll see you tomorrow night. Please return your cards.